man, thank you all so much for coming tonight. Just the conversations we had leading up to right now, like I'm energized from it. So I'm really grateful and honored each and every one of you came out tonight. My name's Sam Dever. I'm a media producer, actor, speaker, podcast host, and Produce Your Passion came out of a speaking course I took about a year ago. And I'm like, yeah, this will be great. I can market my podcast and get on stage. And then my first session with my speaking coach, she goes, so what are you going to talk about? And I'm like, oh, I got to come up with the concept. And then I thought about it and I'm like, man, what am I going to talk about? I'm not famous, never made a lot of money in any of my creative projects. But when I sat down and I thought about it, but one thing I have always done, or at least tried to do, I've always just done it. Whether I had the money, didn't have the money, I've always had that will and drive to get the project done. I know a lot of you here are the same exact way. So Produce Your Passion was born, and these are our events. This is our second event. We're going to do a panel. I have an awesome panel tonight. We have Kelly Yasmin. She's an actor. She's a writer, a poet, a model. We have David Bradley. He is author and creator of Big Head Bob. And we have KC Christon. He's a writer, producer, director, and he's also a children's book author as well. And then after the panel, we're going to do a one-on-one interview with Kelly Schwarze. Many of you know him. He's an Emmy award-winning filmmaker, author, entrepreneur, co-owner of the Indie Film Factory here today. And I just want to first and foremost thank Kelly and the Indie Film Factory for giving us this space because they're awesome. So thank you all so much for coming tonight. Produce Your Passion is about overcoming obstacles to bring your vision to life, whatever it is, and becoming your most authentic self. So with the panel, we're going to start to dive in. If you guys could come up at this time and we'll get going. Okay, so really quick, if you guys could just go down the line really quick and introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do.
Hello, I'm Kelly Yasmin, and I am an author, model, poet. I've edited a couple of books as well. I'm a creator at heart, so I'm an artist.
Hi, I'm Big Head Bob. That's enough of that. My name's David Bradley Schnitzer. Schnitzer is very hard to say, so David Bradley is my author name. And I created a character when I was young. I make books and cartoons, and it's mental health centered, and that's what we do.
Good evening, everyone. Evening. I'm KC. I am the creator and writer-director of Dog City, Chapter 1 and 2. I also author the Hang It with KC children's book series. And it is an absolute pleasure to be here.
And at the last event, I was calling it the Produce Your Passion Avengers, and for this one, I'm going to call it the Produce Your Passion Jedi Council. I frequently talk with these three regularly. Kalila actually edited the Produce Your Passion book, so thank you for that. And
You're welcome.
I want to start this off. This concept's been coming out a lot lately because I think everyone has great ideas. Like, there's a lot of great ideas in the world, but the difference between the great ideas and sometimes average ideas is execution. So you all three have produced several passions in your careers. What was that moment when you first took action? Like, what was it that inspired you when one of your books or one of your projects where you're like, you know what, I'm actually going to do it? And what were those first steps?
I'll speak on my favorite book, probably. So when I did Matador, I was actually in Shanghai with my mother. We were visiting, and I wanted to convey a story that was going to explain the experience that I was having there. And the better way to do it was to use characters to tell a story that I wanted to share. And that inspired me to get it done. Yeah.
And you had written books leading up to that?
Correct.
And then what was that for you in your writing process? What was the first step you take usually? Because writing a book is hard. it's a lot of work. So what?
Well, everything starts with an idea with me. And sometimes before I write a book, it's like I can see the ending already. I think we can say that about a lot of our relationships. We look at them and we're like, I already know how this is going to end. So I think that was the vision. I already knew the ending, and then I just had to fill in the blanks.
Awesome. Perfect.
Hi.
Hello.
I'd say the monumental shift of what I was doing. I worked on the Strip for 12 years, Wynn Resorts for 8, MGM for 2, up until the pandemic. And pandemic hit. 3 months into it, my brother had a baby, and I had this motivation, this like change in energy to do something to make this kid proud. And I recall being on a rooftop and looking at Vegas, and it was a 360-degree rooftop. And you're like, 1 degree is the Strip, 359 is the rest of the world. How do I reach those people? How do I see this kid that, like, when I traveled in Vietnam and he's living in his store with his family, and how do I reach that kid who's on his phone from where I am? Digital. So that was my shift of, like, not necessarily I don't want to go back to the Strip, but I want to reach a broader audience. There's 40 million people that come to Vegas per year plus, and there's billions of people on the planet. So the first time when I realized that, oh, I could do something full time was I digitized my old tapes and saw these photos from growing up, and I saw this character Bob. As big as the paper was, that was his head, googly eyes, one little hair, and something in my heart and my brain just clicked, and I said, I'm gonna stick with this guy. And I drew it, and I saw all these old photos, made it into a book for my nephew, and I got 150 requests, emails from teachers during the pandemic say, can you come into my classroom, do a virtual visit? And I was like, whoa. And then I did it, didn't ask for $1, didn't make $1. People purchased the books. Pandemic started to release a little bit, closed down again. Teacher asked, can I put it in my teacher's board and Facebook groups? I was like, yeah, of course. And I got 400 emails from teachers from the US and Canada asking me to come visit and do these virtual visits, 30, 45 minutes at a time. And someone offered to pay me $200 for a visit, and light bulb went off. I was like, I could get paid for this? And that was the big major, like, all right, I want to do this for the rest of my life.
Love it. Thank you so much. Now, KC. Love your shoes, by the way. Oh, yeah, the whole thing. I should acknowledge that.
Thank you. Repeat your question, please.
So what was that moment in any of your projects, whether the Hanging with KC series, Dog City, where you knew you had the idea, but then you actually like, okay, I'm actually going to do this? And what were those first steps to get that project off the ground?
So that is a very vast answer. So I'll condense it. I happen to be working for a woman who was well off, and she said something to the extent of, I want to do something fun with my money. And I told her about a friend of mine, bless his soul, Troy Price, who passed with cancer a couple of years ago. But I showed him his studio, and she said, man, I really love this. And she said, I'd like to make a movie. Hey, what's up? How you doing? And I said, well, I got a screenplay. She said, let me take a look at it. I said, you sure? I was like, look, I'm just writing some shit, because I write. I've written several children's books that I've gotten published, etc. And now this is completely out of the fucking norm. Can I curse? Is this okay?
I think we're there. I think we're there now.
Well, I mean, that's how I roll, baby. Hey, fuck it. That's how I roll. But I sent it to her, and she said, I just want to do something fun with my money. Now, this is a woman with handsome 8 figures, just So this don't happen. So don't think this is going to happen. It just happened. And so I sent her I sent her the fucking screenplay, and she read it and said, "Come see me tomorrow." I said, "All right." So I come to her office, and she hands me an envelope, and I say, "Okay, what's this?" She says, "Go home. Everything is in there." I open it up, and she says, "Go make your fucking movie." And I am godsmacked. Like, what, okay. Let me get some friends together, Mr. Dever included, Will Edwards. I talk with Mr. Kelly and all these other people to say, how do I put this together? And we did. And I drew back to a friend of mine who I was in his incredible production for Fee Ogino. And I thought about, okay, what do I need to do to put, to make this work? And we Legoed it, in essence. We pieced it together, and, we got what we got. And here it is. So I will say this was an anomaly, how this happened. That's one of those things where the stars just fucking align, man. And it just happened. But I'm extremely grateful for that. I would never encourage anyone to think that's the way it's gonna happen, but it can.
Right.
It just can.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. And awesome. And we'll move to our next question. Just a quick note. I think it's a good example too of a lot of us fantasize like, oh, if I just had the money, if I just had the money. You'd be surprised if you were handed the money, how many people wouldn't be able to do it too. So that kudos to you for being able to execute that. So moving to the next question and the thick of it of Produce Your Passion, we talk about obstacles. We talk about overcoming financial, mental, emotional obstacles. So my next question for all three of you, and you don't have to name them all, pick one or two. What has been the biggest obstacle for you in your creative entrepreneurial journey, and how did you get past that?
Probably the fear of being judged. I had a different answer in mind at first, but I think I'm going to go with that one. Probably the fear of being judged. I think as an artist, you have to be vulnerable, and it's important to put yourself out there and realize that not everybody is going to like everything, and that's fine. There was once a man I met, and I didn't know him, but he had read one of my books, and he hated it. But he read it, so I got his money. Anyway, he compared me to another author, and he was like, well, your book was better than his, so I do give you that. And then I told him, I said, regardless of your opinion, I was like, I appreciate your input. I said, but regardless of your opinion, I said, do you like Justin Bieber? And he was like, no. And I said, is he still successful despite your lack of interest in him? And he was like, yes. I said, well, thank you. So I think that's the biggest obstacle, is realizing that you're not for everyone, but you are for someone. And you'll find your people, you'll find your audience.
That's great.
That's amazing. The first thing that popped into my head was not knowing how to do anything. I'd never written a book. I'd never edited, formatted, published, never had a website, never had a YouTube channel, never done most of the things. But the passion was in me. So I didn't care, and I figured it out. And the real issue was sales. I love marketing. I'm really good at it. I was a director of marketing. I excelled at managing and working together with people, but the amount of no's that I get is insane every single day. It hurts to say it. But that also is combated with 50 to 100 comments from kids all over the world saying, I love you, you're my favorite YouTuber, you helped me. And events popping up every week or two and doing really cool things. So working together with people that are good at sales would be beneficial. But, you know, my uncle, even who's been supporting my business, he's like, wrote me a check as a line of credit. And he's like, you know, every no brings you one step closer to the yes. And it's super true. And it's just like what you said, is like, you'll find, I don't want to work with someone who says no. I don't want to work with someone who doesn't share my vision. They're doing me a favor by pushing me in a direction towards someone who will welcome me with open arms and support and do a way better job than what I was so sad about. Very, very quickly, I had a conversation with this huge company called Spin Master. Never heard of them. Google them. They own everything. They own Paw Patrol. They own the rights to like Etch-a-Sketch and like all these crazy things. And they were hyping me up. I love what you do. This is amazing. This is next level. We're going to put you in touch with our TV department. We're going to put you in touch with our toy department. We're going to put you in touch with both. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then, hey, unfortunately, we're not going to champion this, you know, best of luck. Keep up the good work. And I was crushed because I'm like, I'm the next Paw Patrol. And then a day later, after I get over myself, I'm like, I didn't even know they existed a week ago. Why was I so upset? Like, this is true. I didn't know Spin Master was a thing. But now I have in my head, one, they've now heard of me. That's the most important. Now they've heard of us and Big Head Bob. And secondly, good, because I don't want to work with people that operate like that. So it hurts, but at the end of the day, like, here's a big win. Yesterday at midnight, I got monetized on YouTube. It took me 8 months. I've had YouTube for 4 years. 4 years. And I took it seriously 8 months ago, and I finally got monetized. I'm like, maybe I can do this forever. So, yay.
Will you repeat your question, Sam?
Yes. So any of your projects, what has been the biggest obstacle for you, and how have you overcome that?
Me. I am my biggest obstacle. I had a conversation yesterday with someone who is very intimate with me. And she said, she began to rattle off the things that I have accomplished. And she said, why can't you see that? And I paused. And then I said, because if I see it the way you do, then I could not do what I'm doing. Think about it. My mind works because of the way it works. And that's why I am so for lack of a better term, hard on myself. I said, no, but you've done this or you've done that. It's like, I don't give a fuck about that. That doesn't matter. And I said to her, now hear me out. Give me some grace. If you see that, how come you haven't done it? Then why don't you do it? And she looked at me. And I said, that's what I mean. I do what I do and see what I see because I'm me. You see this from a different vantage point. My vantage point is what it is. And I'm never going to be satisfied. But that's how I create. That's how I create. That's how I've got books. That's how I got films. That's how I've got artwork all over my fucking house, etc. And you don't. And I'm not saying that to put a particular, leverage on her, but it's no. If you saw it the way I saw it, then you would do it, but you don't. I am my worst critic. I hate it. Look at James Baldwin. Look at, and I don't ever want to put myself in the category of Jean-Michel Basquiat and all these motherfuckers who died early, but there's that pull and tug of creativity that they just don't, they just can't achieve. So to your question, Mr. Dever, is, man, one of the things I've learned when I'm painting is when to stop. I do portraits, I do abstract, etc. But the key is to know it's done. Stop. Because you're going to fuck it up. And I done fucked up some really good paintings, man. But you got to know, all right, stop. And that is the biggest challenge, I would say, for anyone, to just have a measure of humility to know to stop. And you're okay. You're okay. Because they're either going to get it or they don't. They don't. And the sad thing is when you're dead, they're going to sell you shit for $50 million.
All right, man. No, I think what's very interesting what all three of you brought up, the obstacles was all more mental and emotional. Like the money, once you get past the money portion of things, it's, for me personally, it's the mental side a lot of times that becomes the toughest part. We, on the Produce Your Passion podcast, a term called the muddle has been coined, stuck in that middle phase, the mud. It's like, because when you first launch something, it's fun, it's exciting. And maybe when you get to the end of it, it's like, yay, we completed it. But man, it's sometimes you don't see the light at the end of that tunnel when you're doing it. So no, KC, thank you for that. And if we can move it to Kalila, we got our final question for you guys. For anyone in the audience or anyone watching this online or listening that wants to produce their passion, for whatever reason, they're write that screenplay, make that short film, start that business, whatever it is, but they're not taking action on it for whatever reason. What can you tell that person?
For anyone that's not producing their passion, what advice can I give them?
And they want to do it.
And they want to do it. I want to cuss, but I don't want to cuss.
You have the mic.
Well, I would say that this is your one life. And as far as I know, we don't get another unless you're Buddhist. And just fucking do it. Like, you have nothing to lose unless, you invest your whole life savings into it. But other than that, I feel like the biggest regret is not doing something other than doing something. I've learned that in my brief life. I have lots of regrets of not doing. My doings are few regrets. So I would say go for it because at least you have it done. And it's nice to complete something. It's nice to have something to look at and say, I did this, I followed through, and be an example for someone else.
Thank you very much.
I'm lazy and I understand myself. I understand the history, it's gonna go a little deep, so hang with me. Grandparents are Holocaust survivors, and I have a charmed life, upper middle class, Jewish kid, everything kind of works out. So I feel like sometimes my motivation doesn't make sense. And what do we do every Friday at 11 a.m., Sam?
We have our accountability meetings.
I find people like Sam to meet with me, and I work with a lot of college students from all over the US, and I pay them $10, $12, $15. Since it's going to sound insane to say, but there's a Stanford University student that gets college credit to work with Big Head Bob LLC. I have 2 students at Wharton that I pay $15 an hour to help me once 2-3 hours a week. And I have these accountability buddies to help me in any field of their choice that aligns with my business. So that is how I overcome after understanding my deficiencies and what I'm good at and what I'm bad at. And I love you, Charity. So Charity, when I first moved to Vegas, one of my first friends, Sam's one of my first friends, Mo's one of my first friends. And I'm sure if you think about it, I didn't like sales. I'm not good at it. I don't want to bother people. I don't want to jump in front of a group like my brother did and say, hey, girls, what are you guys doing tonight? You want free bottle service? I don't like that. But if I tell you how excited I got when people would write me messages on Facebook back in the day and say I'm coming to Vegas, I loved it. I love helping people. I love hospitality. It's my favorite thing, to take care of people. But I want them to come to me, and I don't want to bother people. And that is sales. So there's something in me that's difficult when I'm pitching things to people I don't know. I would prefer they hear about me first. It just takes a lot longer. So my advice is find an accountability buddy in the field that you're trying to do. It's unbelievable the resources that we have now. Upwork, ChatGPT, Fiverr, you could hire someone to do anything. So find that person if you can't do it yourself, if that's your goal, but also try to understand why is that your goal. That's kind of your purpose, right?
Sam, will you repeat your question, please?
For those that want to produce their passion, but they're not taking action for whatever reason, whatever the obstacle is, but they want to do it, but they're being held back, what words of wisdom could you give to them to push forward with it?
What I will say is that we are in the month of August 2025. You don't have time to delay. Give me a moment. There have been a few times in the United States of America where things have completely changed. One of the things that has changed this country was in the late 1800s. That was the combustible engine. And that completely changed the landscape of the United States. That transported people, goods, and ideas across the country. So what took you months to get from Chicago to Los Angeles took days. It changed the country. It changed it. Think about it. They were able to transport goods and people and ideas, and the country bloomed overnight, in essence. So in 10 years, what was inaccessible is now accessible. Understand this, people. We are now here again. How? Artificial intelligence is the new combustible engine. So, if you're going to do something, you need to do it now. Because in 5 years, 2025, was this August 2025? Is this 25? In August 2030, our conversation is going to be completely different. We're not going to be doing the things that we are doing today. We're going to be doing some completely different shit. It's almost as if, okay, who's over 40 here? Raise your hand. Who knows what a Thomas guide is? It's going to be like you looking at a Thomas guide in your car. And you're like, motherfucker, what is it? Hit the GPS. That's what it's going to be like. And so if you think for 1 second, oh, I'm going to get to it later, it's too late. It's too late. Today, tonight, go to your home. Get your notepad out. I was talking to my man Donovan. Good dude. I woke up at 3 a.m. 2 nights ago and I wrote down a script for a film. But I had to do it because it's just, you cannot wait. If you think it's going to be okay tomorrow, the next day, it's gone, man. It's fucking gone. This shit is moving so fast that by the time you understand, you're behind the curve. Don't wait. That is my advice. Do not wait and just, or here's the deal. Produce your passion. What is your passion? If your passion is, look here, man, I just want to play golf and fucking drink and have a good time. Well, how do you do that? Then that's what you need to be focused on. How do I fucking play golf all day? Figure that out. But I'm telling you, this shit is moving so fast that you can't delay. You just can't delay. And I'm saying that as a producer, writer, director. I mean, Kelly, Gino, Sam, all these motherfuckers know. I talk to them. It's like, yo, man, this shit is just, it's like every week there's something new. And it's like, well, I didn't know about that shit. I didn't know how to, what's this? What's that? So if you're not up on that shit, you're left out.
Urgency. Urgency. Well, thank you all so much for this panel. Again, much respect for all of you. Really grateful for our friendships and communications. Really quick, if you could all just tell people where they can find you, your work, if they want to get a hold of you. We'll start with Kalila here. And where they can learn more.
You could find me on my website, KalilaYasmin.com. You can Google me. I'm Googleable. Is that a word?
Googleable.
Amazon. 7 of my 8 books are on Amazon. And yeah, thank you.
It's bigheadbob.com or at bigheadbob or all that. And again, my name is David Schnitzer. My Instagram is Schnitz. So you can look that up too. But thank you so much for your time. Appreciate y'all.
So I'm on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted. So I'm on Instagram, hanging with KC. That's HANGNWITHKC. It's the same with Facebook, but I'm not on Facebook much. I'm old school. But I'm on Instagram. You know, you can contact me on that.
DogCityFilm.com.
Oh yeah. It's been a long week.
Kind of a big project.
It's been a long week, folks. Dog City Film, DOGCITYFILM.com. Chapter 3 coming soon.
Let's hear it for the panel. So I met Kelly, we were talking about probably 12 years ago at a networking event workshop here. And ever since, I've had the privilege to work with him on projects. He has phenomenal books. He's, again, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, author, entrepreneur. He's just a brilliant mind. And he's also so giving to this, not just Las Vegas community, but just the film community and creators with all the great content he puts out. So I would like to welcome up to the stage, Kelly Schwarze.
It's so strange, like doing a walk-up in the studio like this. First off, thank you guys for all being here. This is awesome.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. Again, thank you to all of you for coming, and thank you for allowing us to create this space. So long story short, I'm flying out to see my grandma out of Vegas for her 90th birthday, and we just did our first event. I was just looking, I'm like, I wonder what he'll say. And hey, Kelly, what would you think if we did a Produce Your Passion event here? He's like, let's do it. So kind of like when someone hands you the check to do it, like, what are you going to do? So thank you so much. The Indie Film Factory means a lot to me and many people. So thank you for this. So
Well, that's why it's here, right? That's the reason why it's here, for these exact reasons,
Yeah. So for those that don't know you or maybe watching this online that aren't as familiar with you, could you just give us a quick backstory on yourself and your Produce Your Passion story?
Well, I've been making movies now professionally close to 30 years. It's crazy to think, I started right out of high school, working on movies, and every step of the way, I've always tried to improve and build upon the things that I'm doing, and never take a look back, And I've been making movies now for most of my life, and I'm recently doing animation projects, which is kind of a new frontier for me. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, no, and one talk, and I know we've had previous talks about this, that I wanted to focus in on this conversation is, and when I moved to LA, I remember telling people about you. Good things. I'm like, I know this guy in Vegas. He really figured it out as far as being able to produce his passions, but at the same time, have it be a business as well. So in this conversation, I want to talk about that line we all teeter of wanting to do what you love, but then finding a way, how can I make this something where this might be a career for me too, or a business or whatever it is. So could you talk a little bit about your process, whether you want to pick one of your film projects or whatever it is, like when you're going into something, your mindset?
Well, for me, my life is kind of like creative war. I look at it this way, like what I want to do is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to figure out a way as if my life depended on it to make a living and to be able to provide for my family and to build opportunities. And I remember many, many years ago, I was my second feature film. And I was at the American film market trying to negotiate a better deal with a distributor that we had signed with. And I remember the distributor saying to us, they did nothing with the movie. The movie wasn't going anywhere. And we said, is there any way we can get the movie back? And the lady said, she goes, you know what? We own this movie for 10 more years. And there's really nothing you can do about it. If we want, we'll put it in a cabinet and nobody will ever see it. And I was so angry. And I remember leaving that meeting and I was standing on the patio of the Lowe's Hotel in Santa Monica and I was looking out at the ocean. And I said, I've got two things I can do. I can either quit and maybe just kind of do filmmaking as a hobby, or I can learn every single thing I possibly can about how this business works on every aspect, including the legal side. So that way, when I come back, I can continue to do what I'm doing creatively, but then have the superpower of business in that background. And so I dedicated the rest of my life to just learning the process of the business. And what I've discovered is there's so many filmmakers that like to not really pay attention to that part of the industry or that part of the process. So for me, it's about finding that balance between what it is you want to do, but then also understanding how these things move. They say things with legs, create things with legs so they can walk and I'm always looking at things that will ultimately live far beyond myself. And in order to do that, sometimes you got to think like a business.
If you don't mind me bringing this up, and correct me if I'm getting this story wrong, but Alien Domicile, right? Your movie you made. Can you break down, because didn't you say you didn't go in with the intention of making an alien movie? It had to do with the Amazon search. Could you tell that story?
Yeah, so Alien Domicile was one of my most commercially successful movies that I've had, and at the time it was a sci-fi movie about Area 51, and it was about these people being trapped in a bunker, and we wanted to just call it Domicile, the idea of a dwelling underneath the earth, that kind of thing. We thought it was a cool title, and I'll never forget the distributor calling me, and he said, "You got to call it what's a domicile? I don't even know what that is." And I go, well, it's like, underneath the terrain and he goes, call it Alien Domicile. And I'm like, oh, it's such a cheesy title. It's such a horrible title. But he was right. That same month when our movie released, I think Alien Covenant came out. And so the algorithms went nuts. And we shot from being this little obscure indie movie to being one of the top movies on Amazon. And then it ended up getting a sequel. They paid me to make a sequel. I didn't make it. They just gave me money and they made the sequel. So the moral of the story was titles mattered in that moment. And sometimes you have to listen to those other voices that are telling you some of this advice.
And with that, so it sounds like, you're really good at pivoting too. I've watched. I remember having a conversation with you a year ago. You were talking about the vertical content's coming. And then next thing you know, in LA, I'm talking to my actor friends and they're all shooting these vertical features now. So can you talk about that? Like how you're always able to keep your finger on the pulse of where things going?
I look at young people. I like looking at the generation that is coming up through the ranks, and I like to see what their interests are. I've got a young daughter at home. She's turning 12 in a couple weeks, and I kind of look at her generation as where I need to focus my efforts in terms of entertainment. I have this sign on the wall that says cinema is a reminder of kind of not necessarily the past, but where things were. And then looking toward the future is trying to figure out and understand how are audiences seeing media? How are they consuming stuff? I remember going in my daughter walked into my office at home and she says, "What are you doing?" I was uploading a YouTube video. And I said, "Well, I'm uploading a YouTube video." She said, "You have a YouTube channel?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And to her, that's a big deal, that's where the future of entertainment is it's different than how I grew up and a lot of people in this room grew up. So when it comes to pivoting, my perspective is always try to figure out read a lot, digest what is happening, pay attention to the younger people that are out there consuming media, and it gives you a good clue and an indication of things that you need to do.
And I want to dive into that a little bit because I know me personally, I have trouble with that. I have trouble well, this is the thing I came up with and this is how we're going to do it. But you seem to be able to let go of some of that. Is there any tips you can give people that, they maybe just, this is not what it needs to be, but if they just maybe adjusted something on it, could go to a whole other level?
Well, look, I mean, you can tweak something endlessly forever, right? Like I think Casey said, you got to know when to quit. You got to walk away from something, right? But I think from my perspective is always be hungry to learn. I think a lot of people are scared to learn. They kind of get into their little buckets and they're really good at what they're doing, but challenge yourself. When I set out to make an animated movie about a year and a half ago, I had a little background in history with 3D programs because I wanted to be an animator originally before I went into live action filmmaking. So I did have a little basis on it, but I mean, those programs were so far advanced from when I was learning, almost 30 years ago. So I had to figure out how do I do this on my own? And I deep dived. I went to YouTube University and I watched these videos and I grinded it out. And, every little detail of that mattered to me at that moment because I needed to build that foundation for knowledge that's going to help me apply it. And then I immediately was able to apply what I'm learning in real time. And I think that's also important. That's at least how I learn. I can't just learn something and then put it away in a filing cabinet for some other time to use. I need to be learning something as I'm doing it. And, repetition. And then eventually you get a new skill. And then you can pivot and add better visual effects to your movies, or you can make an animated movie. And that's kind of been my process. I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. And so I want to talk about some obstacles that you've faced, but before them, so what advice would you have for the people that I love producing my passion, but I want to figure out, how maybe I could monetize this or make money with it. And sometimes with produce your passion, like I said, it's not produce your profit, but for those that do want to go that route, that do want to try to make a career, make money with it, what advice would you give to them? Things to think about.
I spent the first 15 years of my career working a day job, so I didn't I'm going to go make movies. And the next thing I'm driving around and making movies. I spent 15 years working at a picture framing shop. And the reason why I worked there was because it was an easy job and nobody cared. I could take off the time that I wanted, but that afforded me the time to make my passion projects, my things that I wanted to do. It's not necessarily about making money doing this. It's about being able to sustain yourself while you were doing those things. So, you don't have to be a famous musician. If you're enjoying playing and you're able to do it and you've got your day job, then that's okay too. I think at the end of the day, it's really about what speaks to you and what drives you forward. And I think creatively, you can find that balance. If you happen to be able to make a living doing that, cool. But it shouldn't be your main focus. I think from a filmmaking perspective, it's just tell good stories. Figure out how to tell good stories to audiences that it'll benefit them. And again, look toward the younger generations, because by the time your movie's done, they're going to be the ones buying that movie.
Oh, I love that. And I'm sure you've come across one or two obstacles in your day.
No, it's been so easy.
We have a lot of, filmmakers in the audience too, just we were talking about how, when you see the finished product and there's a premiere, it's like, oh yeah, but it's like, man, the work that went into that movie to get to that point, it's insane.
Every day is hard. Yeah. Every single day is hard. And I'll kind of put it in perspective. I mean, I've had monumental things, like I was telling you, the distribution contract where I lost that movie. I've also had other movies that tanked. I mean, my last live action feature film has made no money. So I'm still in the red on that guy. So, you have those setbacks, you have those failures. I could look at that and dwell on it, but it's time to move on. It's time to saddle up, move on to what's next. When I'm done with a movie, it's like the kid has grown up, gone to college. I never want to see you again. Like, I really don't. I don't like to watch the movie. I don't want to go back and talk about the movie that much. Like, it's dead to me. I want to move forward. I'm always only interested in what I'm doing next. You know, that's where my focus always is. And I think from a filmmaking perspective, you go make that first short, you could tweak it for 100 years, the rest of your life, and it will never be perfect. Move on, like pass it up, move on, keep moving. You should always be excited about what's next, not what you've done, you know.
What has been your biggest obstacle for you personally?
I think money. Money is always
It's a good answer.
challenge.
It's reasonable.
You know, it's never, you know, when you're making movies, I mean, you know, I would say, I mean, aside the economic failures of some of my movies, I would say, like, you know, I've lost really good colleagues through you know, breakups in business. That's always been dramatic, you know, in terms of you working on a creative team and then you have a falling out with people. And we've had those instances in my past. But I think ultimately, I think the biggest challenge that I've ever had to overcome is finding the balance and continuing to do what I do while finding the balance with my family. I remember I was in Nebraska, some random screening for one of our movies, and my wife was pregnant at the time. And one of the audience members says, "Oh, so your wife's pregnant. Boy, this is sure going to slow you down." And I remember I was so angry by that comment. This guy thought that, oh, because I was going to have a kid, I wasn't going to be able to keep at the speed that we were making these movies. And so I was like determined after that. So I went on like a mission. You know, after my daughter was born, I think I made like two other feature films, you know, in the span of like two years. But like those things, I think that's the hardest part. You know, finding life happens every single day, whether it's a flat tire or an illness or whatever. You've got to figure out a way to make this a priority, to make your passion a priority. It has to be just as important as you brushing your teeth and eating healthy or exercising. You have to give it a little bit of a percentage of your time each and every day. And that the hurdle that you always will run into is life.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we were having some conversations beforehand, you know, because in film, yeah, the easy go-to is like, well, we don't have the money. You know, but it's like, what are you doing though to maybe get you the money, or what could you do without it right now? What advice do you have for those people that want to make that film and they have no money? Like, what are some things that they could be doing instead of just saying, I have an idea for a movie?
Well, first off, they could be writing it down. And, you know, there's really no excuse not to create things anymore. I mean, now you have your phones, you have a YouTube channel, which is the world's biggest distribution platform. So I think it's really about just creating forward movement. I always use the analogy, nobody wants to get on the bus that's not moving. But when the bus starts moving, then people want to get on the bus. You got the camera person or the editor who says, hey, that sounds cool, I want to get involved. But nobody's going to know that unless you don't create forward movement. So get the script written down, create some behind the scenes videos, talk about your process, talk about your journey to write the story. Put it out there. And if you have to, shoot the movie with whatever means you can shoot it with. And if anything, it's a giant proof of concept, you know? But what you're going to learn quickly, and what I learned early on in my career, is the second I create forward movement, that's when people want to come to the table. Nobody wants to get on the going nowhere bus, you know?
So keep doing stuff.
Keep doing stuff. And here's the other thing. Don't feel foolish or scared. I think a lot of people are scared. They're so scared to do something because they feel so foolish. Like, oh, I'm going to do this and I don't know what I'm doing. You know, what I loved about hearing all the speakers previously was that, you know, they just kind of jumped off the cliff and then built the airplane on the way down. And that's kind of what you have to do, but you can't feel scared to go out and make a fool of yourself. Go make a fool of yourself, you know?
No, I love that. And as far as future of filmmaking, where do you see everything going? What advice do you have for people moving forward with the way the industry's headed right now?
You know, I agree with Casey. I believe we're in this transformational moment in history with technology, especially as it relates to art and generative AI and all these great, crazy things. I take a little different approach to it. I think it's important to understand these tools. But I also think that in terms of the future, it's always going to be about storytelling, and whether it's us prompting it or us sitting down and writing it, it's still going to be about a good story. And the only way people are going to want to come sit in a seat and watch anything in their very precious time is if it resonates with them. So, make that your focus. Somebody was asking me earlier about cameras and stuff. Like, I don't care about any of that. I'm not interested in lenses. I don't care about what they're doing at NAB or CES. I could care very little about that. But what excites me is when somebody has a good story. And that story is like, wow, that's gonna speak to somebody. And if I can say something that's going to connect with an audience member because they can relate to that story or those characters, that to me is what's important. That's the future. That will always be the future.
I love it. You can have all the bells and whistles, but if you don't have that, you still have nothing.
Yeah, technology is going to keep changing no matter what we do. But good old-fashioned storytelling, we've been doing it ever since we've been carving things into a wall. So make that your priority.
That's awesome. And as we get to the end here, for those people, I asked the last panel, I asked them, for those who haven't produced their passion, they're not, what advice would you give? But for you, I'm going to say, for those that are producing the passion and they don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, or they're stuck in the mud, they're in that middle phase, or they're getting burnt out, whatever it may be, what advice do you have for that group to keep going?
Well, look, I mean, it's very difficult, like you said, to stuck in the middle. That's a very good analogy. I think you have to understand it's going to get better. Like, things get better. I mean, if you took the worst thing you're dealing with right now, I guarantee you in 2.5 weeks, it's not going to be that big of a deal, right? It's the client headache, or it's this, or it's that. In 2 weeks or in a month, it's going to be totally obscure, right? Same thing when you hit that hurdle, or like the motivation to keep going on your project because you can't see it monetized, or you can't get distribution for your movie, or you can't get financing or whatever. You have to remember it's going to get easier. It's going to get better. Just keep doing it. I was telling Asia earlier, it's not about doing 100% every single day. I think everybody wants to do, go to the extreme. We do that a lot in America because we put so much pressure on ourselves to be entrepreneurs and successful people. But you got to just do 5%, do 2%. If you can't do 2%, do 1% every single day. And then add up, do the math at the end of the week, at the end of the month. You'll realize you're making progress. But at least do 1%. And if you can do 5, great. But don't try to chew so much in one sitting. Break it into little pieces.
I love that. And especially when we live in a social media digital culture like we do, where, you open up your Instagram and like, oh, this person's doing this and this person's doing that. I must be terrible.
It's all lies. I'm much better looking here than I am on social media. So. No, it's all lies. I mean, look, it's about marketing, right? Like, nobody goes and does social media and says, well, here I am at the grocery store and I'm buying some soup. Like, nobody's doing that, right? Like, they're telling about their best life, and they're filming in front of the nice background, but if you turn this way, you see the dumpster, So that's so you can't look at that stuff, I just want to pay attention to what I'm doing, and I keep my head in the sand a lot, and I've got people that are like, oh, what are you going to do about this and that? It's inconsequential.
Just stay focused. Okay. Well, Kelly, this has been a pleasure. Again, thank you so much for having us here. And before we get out of here, what can we look for you, the Indie Film Factory, future projects, and everything you have going on?
Yeah, well, we have an animated movie. It's called Can's Animated Adventure. It's a working title. But that movie will be out later next year, and it'll be our first. And then we're going to keep doing animated projects. We've got a feature that we're producing, another live action feature. I'm not directing it, but our team is working on it. So yeah, we're just making movies. That's what we do. We're a factory, so we just keep trying to churn out some movies all the time. So
awesome. Well, congratulations to you and everything that you have accomplished and everything that's going on. Again, for people watching this online, where can they find you? Where can they find information about the Indie Film Factory?
Well,
any
like
of your
Kalila
books?
said, Googling me. Yeah. Kelly Schwarze, I'm Googleable. Yeah, I'm Director Kelly on Instagram, and then of course I have my books on Amazon. And then we're slowly building up a YouTube presence for our animation stuff, which, boy, that's a deep hole to dig ourselves out of. I'll talk to you guys in 4 years about that.
Oh, I love it. Well, Kelly, thank you so much once again. And then similar like I do on the Produce Your Passion podcast, how would you like to end this conversation? What words of wisdom can you leave us with tonight as we all go out there and keep producing our passions?
Oh, that's a great question, and a lot on the spot here to come up with a good.
You said to surprise you. So
you sure did.
That wasn't in the email.
I'll say this, and this may sound cold, and it may actually sound a bit disheartening, but nobody cares. Think about this for a second. The only person that cares about as much about what you're doing is you, and that's all that matters. The people that are you're thinking that, oh, they're not paying attention. Trust me, they're not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. They're thinking about the stuff they're doing. So when you're out creating your movies or your shows or your podcast, do it for you. Don't worry about if it's resonating with people just yet. You create the thing, and then people will come on board, and people will see it. But right now, it's just about nobody cares. Just go out and do your thing.
I love it. Kelly, let's hear it for Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you for tuning in. To learn more, go to produceyourpassion.com.